because it's my opinion here. So we're just going to use my own knowledge, and yeah, we'll see what the units are going to be at, what I think is strong, what I think is weak, and what I think is pretty good. We're not really going to count the cards or rare situations. We're just going to try to generalize anything. And yeah, I think we're going to start with increasing costs. We'll start from 100 and move our way up. So first one, the crawler, 100 cost. Lately, I'm pretty sure it's been decent. I do like its new attack. It has half the damage, but it also has half the attack speed, and I like it. I use it in pretty much every game, but it doesn't carry, but it has its uses. I'm pretty sure it's in a good spot right now. You can do well with them, but they're not carry worthy. But I have a strong opinion that 100 cost you shouldn't be able to carry games. And next up, we got ourselves the marksman. Marksman, this is going to be contradictory from those watching that are a little bit on the lower end. Marksmen, they're very situational, and they're not that good in my opinion. You could barely use them in the early game. When you do use them, it's either you're doing the ass man strat, which could get shut down pretty easy unless you got tons and tons of practice, or you just get them for anti-air. Either way, you barely get them in a game. They're super situational. They're not in a great spot, but they're not so bad you'll never play them. So I think, I don't know, C is probably good. Arclight, oh, they're almost like a marksman. They're very, very good in the early game. They fall off pretty hard in the later game. They clear chaff, that's about it. Later game, there's way better stuff to clear chaff. It's very rare that you actually see a carry build nowadays. Maybe still in the lowers, but I'm not sure. It's basically the same equivalent as a marksman. Not terrible. Could probably use a little buff to get a little higher, but super rare I even touch it. And then we go into the last 100 cost. We got the Fang. Fangs used to be pretty busted. They have an extremely strong kit for offensive and pretty decent defensively too. They used to just solo carry games with a little bit of support. Not so much the situation yet. It could still happen though, just because of their tech, and they are pretty much a main staple in almost anybody's build. So they're a little stronger than what they should probably still be. They should be more variant, but yeah, it's very rare you see a game where people just don't take fangs. So we'll put it in the A. I don't think they're broken, but I think they're strong. And then we got balls now. We're moving up to the 200 cost. Balls, oh, they are mostly played just in aggro decks. They're very good aggressively. They fall off pretty hard too after a while. You can't really play them in standard. I'm trying to think of people that played them standard. I have seen it in standard, but they never seem to do well, and they sell out. So they're just there to be there. I don't think they're awesome. I don't think they're strong. They can be. Everything can be. I'm sure you can make a proper build. I'm between the two here, but I'm pretty sure it's a C. Maybe not. No, we'll say C. I think they could be a little bit more improved, but that'd have to be like a tech-wise type of thing. And then we move on to Sledge, which is a lot of people's favorites, including mine. One really fun unit. I really enjoy that unit. It's gotten a lot of love recently. Very strong unit now. It's got a good kit defensively. It's got a good kit offensively. They're not in every games, but when you do play them, you play them as the star almost. unless they are there for just bodyguard position, but yet you still get a bunch. I think they are very strong right now, so they are definitely in the A section. And then what do we got here? The Wasps. Wasps could be fun, but unfortunately for the Wasps, they're not very good. They have some decent tech, I should say, but the only time I personally get Wasp is basically just as a distraction or just a throwaway unit to absorb shots. They're like chaff, but that barely get anything done. At least with crawlers, they have a chance to kill stuff. Wasp, not so much. They are just hard countered by one unit, and that unit does very well against them. So unfortunately, it's going to be in the D section. We got ourselves the Hacker now. Hacker, very unique unit. Very fun to play with if you're trying to, but unfortunately, it's a little bit weak and it is so niche that you could never really get it because they're a little bit too squishy. There's probably a couple things you could do to make it a little bit better, but it's just the fact that you could feed your your enemy more XP by feeding its own captures, but just the fact that it doesn't get kill XP compared to all the other units, it's kind of painful because it just shares 100% of the XP. And I think it's probably the most rare unit ever seen in gameplay. So I really enjoy the unit, but it is a D. And then we're going on to the Rhino. Rhino is kind of like a ball, but stronger. It's used basically just in aggro. You can't really do much with it. When you do snowball with them, you are using them as carry snowball, but like, it's just so rare. It's hard to defend, but you can defend it. You can't really play it standard, but it is an aggressive unit, so I think it's made for aggression, but it does a way better job than balls most of the time. So I think it's slightly better than a ball. So I think we'll put it, I think it's in a good spot. I don't think it's too strong, but I don't think it's weak either. So I think it's in a good spot right now. I have no issues with it. Its tech's pretty good for what's aggro. And then we got the Mustang now. That was the bane for most players. Not really my bane, but it's been the bane. It's a very strong unit. For how much damage it does versus a lot of the early game, and it still does very well in the late game, you could specialize it to do extreme damage to air. So it's definitely still a super strong unit. It's probably the unit that takes most of the items properly. I don't think it's quite overpowered where it needs to be like it's in every game. It's not like to that point, but it's still very, very strong. And then now we're moving on to the Stormcallers. Stormcallers, it's either you love them or you hate them, I noticed. I personally love them. I don't really mind them. I do find that they're easy enough to counter if you know what you're doing. But for me, it's a staple part of my build. It's a must-have. Not for everyone, I guess. But yeah, you could use them defensively. You could use them aggressively. So they are really good. I don't think they're overpowered, mind you. Like, their damage is good. Their splash is good. Their tech, you basically just use 2. They're basic 2, and the rest you basically ignore. Most people don't even touch them. So I don't think they're too strong. I don't think they're too weak, but I think they're in a decent spot right now. They're beatable. They do carry sometimes. So yeah, I think they're right in the middle. I think they're in a decent spot. And then we're moving on to Phoenix, which will be the last of the 200 costs. Phoenix used to be really well played. since we're excluding cards and all that, we can't really use that as a judgment because with some of them they're pretty freaking busted. But on its own, with its tech, it's used basically as a situational item. I don't think it's too powerful. I don't think they might actually be a little bit on the weaker side. They could probably use a small buff, but that might be contradictory. But they're not that used. But they're like it almost needs to have a space between B and C. They're basically between the B and C in my opinion. But for now, I think they're okay. They're in a good spot. You could do well with them. You could do bad with them. You could play them aggressively. You could play them defensively. I think they're in a good spot. And then we're moving on finally to the 300 costs. The newest unit in the game so far. The Scorpion. Scorpion, we thought it was going to be a game changer for a while. But it's very niche and very situational. You only basically pop it up in a rare occasion of a certain matchup. If you're going maybe tanks or war factories or something, it's the only time you pretty much see them. Other than that, they're not very good. So unfortunately, I don't have much to say about it. I do wish they were a little bit better because I think they could be really fun. I think their tech choices are pretty meh. So I think they could probably be improved a little bit more. So I'll put them a little bit on the weaker side. Now we got the Wraith. Now that is a topic right now on everybody's mind. Some people love it right now. Some people absolutely hate it. I'm one of the people that used to enjoy the Wraith, but now they are officially just out of hand and out of control. They got way too much love in the past few patches. They are definitely broken right now. There is no doubt about it. I think a good nerf for it right now is to increase the XP needed for it to level up. Right now it only needs what, 1200 or something like that, but the Phoenix needs 1300, so it's really easy to get a level every level, or every round, sorry. And yeah, once they snowball, they got out of control. You slow that down, maybe you have a chance to not let them snow down, but right now they're almost in every game. You could just use them. They can use every item. It doesn't matter what item it is, they can use it very well. Way too busted. Questionable buffs. Questionable buffs there. And we're going to move on to the Giants. We got a Melter. Melter, again, a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. Do I think it's busted? Not really. Do I think it could be... Can it be nerfed? No, I don't think so. I think it's in a pretty useful spot. I barely use it myself because my playstyle just doesn't fit it, but I do use it. But from what I see against me, they're used often. If you don't know me, then check out my other stuff. Check me out on Twitch or whatever. But I think they're in a pretty good spot. I don't think they need much of a buff or a nerf or anything like that. Then we got Overlords. Again, people love it, people hate it. I do think the warp drive is kind of a silly tech for it because it makes really weird games and non-fun games, and it's just like takes any of their... It annihilates the first whatever rounds of positioning and just throws it out the door with some certain builds, and then like your positioning doesn't matter anymore. Like it's a silly unit. I don't think it's too actual strong in a fight. It's just that one specific tech with it. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's too weak. I think it's in a decent spot, but there's a certain tech I really don't enjoy, and I think most people don't enjoy it. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good unit. I think it's in a good spot. The fort. The fortress. Now, the fortress is kind of like the go-to for a lot of things. It sees a lot less play now that the Fang meta is gone, but it still sees play. As a giant, it's probably one of the bigger ones. It's good offensively, it's good defensively. Most people use it as support for another different kind of carry, but it does do its job when you do use it. It's very rare when you get it, you have a game plan with it, you know what you're doing. They do games, they have good games, they're fun. I think they're also in a pretty good spot. And then we're moving on to the Vulcan. Now the Vulcan is under fire right now, pun not intended. Um, this thing is the bane of the early game, the bane of the math chaff. This thing destroys games, and it actually does ridiculously well against the 200 cost too, a little bit. I do think, as of right now, my opinion is that it's starting to get a bit too strong. Like it does its job too well, if you know what I mean. Like there should be better counterplay for it. There are counterplay, but the fact that this thing could solo all your ground units without even trying, I don't think it's S class yet. Like where it's so broken that like, but it's almost there. It's close. It's very 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 strong. And then last but not least, my unit that everybody tends to know me for. This is going to be controversial. I know it's going to be, but it's actually not that good of a unit. I know people are going to lose their mind when I say that. But in general, if you look at everybody else and whoever else tries to play it, it's never used for a reason. It's most units counter it. I know I kind of make it look easy, but that's experience for you. But I really don't think it's that strong. I don't think it really needs a nerf. It's one of these units that's between B and C here again. But if you, it's in a tricky spot because it is an 800 cost, right? So if you buff it up too much, one small buff could jump it up to like S tier real easy. And if you don't, but I think it's like I said, it's between here and here. I would personally put it here in my own games, but judging from everybody else's game, it's basically a C unit. I personally don't think it needs that much more love. But yeah, I know that's going to throw some stuff up. If you disagree with me, feel free to add comments. I want to know your thoughts. But yeah, right now in the state of the game, I'm enjoying it. I don't think things are way too busted. I'm sure other people's opinions are going to be different about what this list is. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm interested. I haven't seen anybody else's tier list. I went out of my way not to look. But yeah, that is my tier list. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.